Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Smith from Whizbang Technologies. This is uncharted waters for us doing these webinars, but we're hoping to continue these. Just a wee bit of a quick intro about myself. I've been with the company for 15 years now, directly employed by Whizbang. But prior to that, I was working for an EFTPOS reseller. So I've actually been involved with the Onetap software for around about 16.5 years. My background, many years ago, I was operations manager for a group of restaurants. So I've got a reasonably strong hospitality background. Yeah, I'm based in Christchurch. So what we're going to do today is just give a quick overview of just the basic menu maintenance, how to set it up correctly and efficiently for your operation. A lot of you will probably be doing these tasks now, but you might pick up some little tips and tricks. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just hand over to Garth to have a wee bit of an intro about himself, and we will go from there.
Morning, everyone. Some of you will know me already. To those who don't, hello, my name's Garth Parkinson. So your background for me, I spent about 15 years in hospo myself, running bars predominantly, but also restaurants and cafes throughout that 15 years. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Chris Smith, who was just speaking back in 2004, when I put Whizbang into a bar that I was running down in Wanaka, when we opened in 2005. So I've known him on and off over the years for that long. I've now been working with Whizbang as the North Island sales manager for just over 5 years now, or coming up 5.5 actually, I think. So yeah, I've got a fairly interesting skill set where I've spent 5 years using the system, running a bar, using the POS system and stock system and all that sort of stuff, and now 5 years plus working with people who are using the system and helping them get the most out of it. So yeah, welcome to the webinar. I'm going to hand back over to Chris. He's going to start off with going through some information about the item groups and things. I'll take over again at some point. During the presentation, feel free to send us a message in the chat feature, and we'll come through to the questions at the end. Yeah, I'll hand back to you, Chris, and let's move ahead.
Oh, thanks, Garth. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go through the, as I said before, the basics of setting up your items and item groups. So I presume everybody can see my screen now. So what we'll do is we'll start with item groups. So the items, how we set up the items in the system is the lowest possible level is the actual items themselves, like your Corona beer or your bagel, and then they are part of an item group. Now, what I like to do with sites is set your item groups up to how your menus are set up. So, your entrees will be in one item group, your mains will be in another item group. And then for things like wines and that sort of thing, you may want to break those down to the varietals of wines. So you might have a group for Sav and a group for Pinot, rather than just have a red wine group and a white wine group. The reason I do this is when you're changing your menus, it's really easy to cross-reference between the actual printed menu and what's in the system. So it makes menu management easier. It also makes the screen design a lot easier as well. So so we'll start with the item groups anyway. So if we create a new item group here, we need to give it a 4-letter abbreviation. And so we might just make a new item group called, bottled beer, which I'll probably need to, sorry, I didn't turn my phone off for 2 seconds. So you have like a new item group called bottled beer, and we can call that bottled beer. Now I've probably already got one in the database, so it's going to say that I can't do that when I save it, but we also need to choose whether it's a food or beverage. GST is going to be the same. We all pay 15% GST. And if it's a surcharge item group, this is how we can set up public holiday surcharges and things like that. We won't go into that just now. Swipe card replacement group is for the loyalty cards. We can set up like items within that group to charge for a replacement loyalty card. If we go into the positions here, we can tell the system whether to force those positions around the table or just prompt, or they manually enter that in. We can also create what's called super item groups. So with the super item groups, you might have a super item group called beer, and then you might have the item groups called bottle beer, imported beer, tap beer. So when you're reporting, you can get those items grouped together. But then you can also, do a report on the item group of imported beer, and obviously the items as well. The pricing schemes, we can have different pricing schemes as well. We won't go into that just yet. We'll run over that in another webinar. And the link code is used to basically link these items to an accounting system through one of our integrations. So it's quite handy sometimes. Then we've also got the loyalty here as well. So we can set up how many points they actually accumulate per dollar spend or unit sold. We will probably run another webinar on loyalty as well. So we just want to concentrate on setting up the items themselves. So once, I'm just going to cancel this because I probably won't be able to save it. So once we've set up the item group, we can also change the order of these item groups, so how they will appear in here. So we can just change order, and we can move those item groups up and down if we want to. We can also sort them alphabetically, just makes it easier to manage those. If we then go into items, and we will look at our beers here. So all these items are part of the beer item group. And if we go into an item, we can actually change the item group. We can move that to another item group if we want to. We can have variations as well, so different variations of items. So this is where you might have an item called flat white, and you might have the sizes as a variation. So you might have a flat white small, medium, and large. They're all attached to that, what we call a parent item. But it just means that you can set up the screen designer to, when they hit flat white, it'll pop up with a list of options there. So you can have one button on the screen called flat white, rather than 3 buttons for the 3 different sizes. And we can go into more detail on that later. We give the item a name. Now it's really important, especially with the likes of spirits and wines, to have the different variations named correctly. So for a Bombay Gin, you'd have Bombay Gin SNG for single and Bombay Gin DBL for double, because you have to have those different variations in the system. And you've also got to think about how they print in the kitchen, because the person pouring that drink or making that item in the kitchen may not know what size if you don't name those correctly. So that's quite important. We can have the 6 price levels, so that we could use one price level as a happy hour price, and the system can change to price level 2 at certain times of the day, or on certain days of the week, or whatever. Barcode here is used if you have barcode scanners. So if you've got like a bottle store, we can put the barcode number in there, so you can just scan the item. And again, link code is just a way to sort of link that to another system if you need to. You don't have to have a course, but on your food items, you might have different courses here. We've got quite a lot of courses available to us in here. Most sites would only have, the entree, mains, desserts, but yeah, that can be quite powerful as well when you're ordering. And I'll show you in a second how to add courses. We've got enter unit quantity. So when you click on the button, you can actually tell it to pop up and ask the required amount. So if you're selling something like oysters and you hit the oyster button, it will pop up and say, you know, how many would you like? And you can put a default quantity on there. So if you normally sell 6 oysters, it'll pop up and that would be the default, but you can override that. Weighed items are for when we integrate with scales. So if you're weighing coffee beans, we can you know, set those up to take a weight from the scales. Enter unit cost, we don't use this a lot. This is a very crude way of getting a GP report. The reason I say it's crude is that when you receive new items, you would have to remember to update this unit cost. So out of our stock module, we can you know, update the cost as we receive items. But yeah, this is just a crude way of doing that. Price excludes GST is something that we don't get to use at all in New Zealand, but that basically says that it excludes the tax. And open price is used for items such as, you know, a miscellaneous item or fish of the day, where it might be a variable price for the customer. Just on miscellaneous items, we really don't like those because it just opens you up for abuse from staff. They can put whatever price they want in there, and you should always have an item for what you're selling because you don't get those historical reports. You can have a minimum and a maximum price in there, so you can put some parameters around that. So I can say, right, my open price item can have a minimum price of $10 and a maximum price of say $20, and they can't override that, so it has to be between those two values, which is quite good as well. The other thing here is you can generate loyalty points on the actual items themselves as well. So if this was a coffee item, for instance, you could say I'm going to earn 1 point for every unit sold, and then in our loyalty module, you'll get to 8 points, and it'll offer the next one for free. Or you could have another loyalty scheme where they earn 1 point for every dollar spent, and when they spend $100, you might offer them a $10 voucher, for instance. But again, we'll cover that off in a bit more detail in a future webinar. If we go back, advanced pricing is really sort of a multi-site pricing option, which we won't go into. So different sites can have different pricing when they're connected to our enterprise module. But if we come back here, we've also got copy price 1. So when we create a new item, we can say, right, we'll make that $9. We can make all of those price levels $9. And copy course, we can actually copy that course to all items in the group as well. So, you know, if we wanted to make all these items in this group an entree, for instance, we could do that in one step. I'm just going to not save that. We'll go back to here. The next thing with items is there's a rule in our system where items have to have a printer. So if you've ever created an item and then you've gone into the screen designer to try and place a button and the item doesn't show up, the reason for this is that there was no printer attached to that item, or no docket attached to that item. So to add a docket, we can just go into dockets here, and we can tell it what printer or docket we want to print that to. So if this particular item, this pure blonde, needed to print you know, a docket to actually make that item, they can go and select the drinks printer. But you can also repeat that to another printer. So this might, you know, repeat this item to our screen called a VOD, which is a visual order display. Or we can say we want to print it to the coffee docket as well. So when somebody orders this item, it will print a docket on the drinks printer and a docket on the coffee printer. Now, if those dockets are coming out of the same printer, it will print 2 copies of that. And we can override these as well. So if we go into advanced printer rules, we can say if it's ordered on the Cashier 2 terminal, we'll send it to a different printer. So it might be that you've got a 2 bars, one upstairs and one downstairs, and the upstairs bar doesn't have a particular tap there. You could tell it to print down to the downstairs dispense printer. So that's quite handy as well. So let's go back to basic. Again, we've got this copy to item group, so we can copy those printer settings to every item in that group. And we'll just save that. We can also copy it to other item groups as well. So if you're changing how your drinks print, you can easily just go through and select all your alcoholic drinks and go OK, and that'll now print to that printer that you've assigned. If you have any questions, again, just feel free to flick those through. I will hand over to Garth to do the next sort of section and maybe cover off anything I've missed, Garth. But yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Yep. Hey everyone. Okay, that was great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I don't think I've got too much more to talk about what you put in there. Just real quick on the item groups after having said that. Something to think about, as Chris said, your item groups, you want to be easy to identify and to be able to edit and maintain. So for instance, if you've got a cafe, your cabinet food, I would break down into multiple item groups, such as your sandwiches, your cakes, your slices, your tarts, your muffins, etc. So rather than having one group that's got 40 items in it, you've got 4, 5, 6, 8 groups that have small amount of items, which makes it much easier for maintaining your screen design, your editing the items and changing things. One of the things we want to do is make sure that we keep our system clean and tidy. So as items come into use and then either trends change or seasons change, you want to be removing things from your system. So with where we are right here at the moment, for instance, this test beer here, we can delete this item. Simply click the delete button, it says, are you sure? Now, we use the word delete, but in reality, it's current and non-current. Nothing is ever fully removed from the system. Down in the bottom left here, you've got the option to show deleted. So this is where all the deleted items go. And from here, now we're in the deleted page. If you see back where the delete button was, we've got an undo delete. This is really, really useful, particularly with seasonal items. So consider you've got a kitchen that's producing lamb shanks, for instance, in winter. As you come around to summer, you're going to remove that from it and replace it with, I don't know, calamari salad or whatever. When winter comes back round, you might be putting it back onto the menu. So we want to undo the delete. Now, this is quite important for a couple of reasons. One, as Chris touched on earlier, every item in the system needs to have a unique description. So if you try and create exactly the same item with exactly the same description, it's going to tell you that you can't do it because it already exists, even though you've deleted it, because it's still in the system, it's just not usable right now. So when you do that, you need to either use the old one or you come up with a new name for it with a different character somewhere in it, upper, lowercase, a full stop, a space. But the problem with that is that you're not comparing last year's lamb shank to this year's lamb shank with a full stop. So you want to reinstate the item, and then your sales year on year are working on the same item. So that's one thing. You want to be changing, removing the things that aren't current in system to keep it nice and tidy. Makes all your reporting much easier to understand. So that is something that I really suggest you keep doing. Let's have a look at price changes now. So what we've got, as Chris showed us with the pure blonde right here, we can click down the bottom right on edit, and we've got the option to change one of the prices or multiple prices. We've got the copy price button, which allows us to change the price 1 to all of the prices. Another option we have is the price button down here with the red $sign. If we click on this, I can manually come in here and override the price for each different price as I want to. Or I can come down to, let's grab the tiger, and I'm going to say, now there's 2 options down here for change prices and change all prices. Change prices applies to the item that I've selected. All right, so if I select this one and I'm going to say change all price levels, and I can increase or decrease. So I can increase, let's say, by an amount, and I'm going to say 50 cents and say okay to that. And so all of those have now gone to $9.50. Now, if I say change all prices, let's say that we've had a price change come in. So I'm going to change all price levels. I can increase the price. I'm going to say that there is a percentage of 5% increase, and I'm going to round it up to the nearest 50 cents and say okay to that. Change all the prices, yes, and every price has gone up. It's kept them at a nice round number and very easy to do. And we can say okay, and that's until you click the OK button at the end there, it doesn't apply it. So if you come out and your prices haven't changed, it's because you didn't click the OK button in the top right hand corner there. So that's price changes, very easy. You can decrease as well. If I click back in here as well, if you change all price levels, we can once again change all price levels. We can decrease by the same amount, or by an amount, or by a percentage. You can also, if you've changed all your price level 1s, you can say set all price levels to price level 1, for instance, and that will change everything to your set price level 1s. Okay, let's just jump out of there for a moment. Modifiers, let's have a look at modifiers. Okay, so modifiers are the ways in which we change the standard rules for a way an item is prepared and sent out to a customer. So a flat white is a flat white, but then you might have flat white with soy milk, or a double shot, or a decaf. There's all sorts of ways that people modify the way they want the food or beverage prepared and sent out to them. So the modifiers we need to enter into the system. Now, if we click on a new modifier, so first off, you've got to have food and beverage. So for instance, you can't attach a beverage modifier to a food item. So this is quite important. So you've got to make sure it's in the right one there. Then enter in a modifier for you. Let's just change that, change my drink. There we go. You can have the modifier, you can assign a price to it. All right, so depending on what it is, it's how much you're going to charge. So we can put the price in there. Now, quantity. This is for the modifier. You can select this up to how many times. All right. So, for instance, if I just go back a step here, if this was a beef patty for your, let's go cheese. If this was cheese to add to a burger or something like that, or any option, we can say this can be added maybe 10 times. You know, you put in a number that's beyond what you think the craziest thing will be, because someone will come up with a unusual thing that you weren't expecting. So that would be a food modifier. It's cheese, it's 50 cents, and you can have it up to 10 times if you so wanted. As a standard, things will always print where the item normally prints. So if you get a burger, you want the add cheese modifier as part of the information that goes with that burger. You don't want it going off to the coffee station, because the coffee person doesn't need to know about this. So standard would be the items printer. Link code, once again, as Chris mentioned, this is for generally either integrations. Sometimes it can be used for reporting, but it would normally be used when you've got multiple businesses that have unique different databases, and you're wanting to compare certain things across the group. Also, unit cost has an option as well that you can manually enter that crude unit cost for it that doesn't change as you receive products into the system. So that's your modifiers. We can add that in there. Now, you can have as many modifiers in the system as you need or want, and different things will call for different bits of information. Modifier groups, I think, is really, really important to make it quick and efficient for your staff to be able to use the system and to be able to get the information around the building. The whole idea is speed and efficiency, so that people don't have to then go and talk to a chef and tell them what that comment means, or that something needs to be added onto it. So to make it easy for the staff to use things, you want to have short, concise groups. The staff shouldn't need to be scrolling through long modifier groups. That's just a waste of their time. So a little bit of time in the setup will make a massive difference in their ability to be able to use the system quickly. So for instance, here with my coffees, I always like to see things like this. So you have a modifier group for coffee milk, coffee notes, coffee strength, and coffee sweetener. So instead of having, you can see here, there's 4, 13, 3, 4. So there's over 20 items here, and if they were all together in the same one, that's a long scroll of things to have here. The most common ones is your milk, your strength, and your sweetener. Down the bottom here, you can see that there's a button for modifiers. So these are the modifiers that are assigned to this group. If you click on an item over here, it will add it to the modifier list. All right. If you're adding a lot of them, if you've got a mouse with a scroll button, as you scroll over, no, sorry, disregard that. So you can click on multiple items here. If you click on the left-hand arrow here, it will remove the highlighted item from the list. So you can get back to what we started with. Okay. So yeah, we have the modifiers that are in them, and then you have the items that are assigned to this on here. And this is what I was starting to say before. With the items, because often you have many, many items that might be assigned to a particular thing, if you click on an item and then use the scroll wheel on your mouse, it automatically selects everything that it scrolls over the top of. So I'll just remove those again. Okay, so that's your modifiers and items. So I'll just show you really quick. I can't see the bottom of the screen there, Chris. Can you click on service? Yeah. So just to show you how that will look. So with a coffee, so we can have a flat white here, and this has a variation set up with it. So we'll just choose a regular one there. So the modifier groups that are available to this have your coffee, notes, milk, strength, and then there's all modifiers. So the notes have quite a few in there, but the milk, you can just click on the things that you need. Okay, I think that probably about covers the basics for modifiers. Let's have a quick look at the variations since that just came up. Can you jump into, thank you, Chris. Okay, so variations, as Chris said, is a way of having what we call a parent item with the children item coming off it. These can be flavor differences, or they can be size options and other things there. We can come up with all sorts of different variations, and in this demo system there is a huge amount of them. I would advise that the simplest way of doing it though is having the option system, which means you don't have to create a new one every time. This does help to show you a little bit of what we're talking about though. So in this first example here, you've got a drinks variation, and it's got an abbreviation of DRKS with a small, regular and large option on it. There's a tap beer one here with tap and then jug and pint tasting glass options coming off it. Okay, and you can see the base variation in the column here. So there's another way of doing these, whereas if we, sorry, so look at the option one here. If you use this option scenario, you don't ever have to create a new variation in the system. The difference is, though, that when we create an item using this, the opt1 through to 5 is what will get suggested in here. So depending on how you're using the system, sometimes the option makes it very easy that you don't have to keep creating new variations. But sometimes if you're changing your menu frequently, I've got a few clients who have multiple tap guest bears that they rotate frequently. So for them, having the tap bear variation allows them to automatically create the new items very, very easily. So let's have a look at what this could look like. If I jump into, where is, okay, here's a good example for you. So we've got an item here called stir fry. It's it's under the stir fry group. It's a satay stir fry, and you can see that its variation is a protein. Okay, the children item of that then have the different proteins within them. So there's vegetarian tofu, you've got prawns, pork, beef, chicken, etc. So if we, down the bottom, if I create a new variation of this, it's going to come up with the barbecue version of it. It's already got the name in the description. It's suggested the price of the last item that we created on it, but I can change the variation by clicking that variation option there for you. It's about as simple as that. If you wanted to change this and say that this is $15 and we would copy price 1, and then we can say okay, and then there's a new version of it there. We can also change the order, so we can bring that one and we can move that down the order and say okay. So what that looks like, if we just jump back into quick sale, sorry, can you hit the service button, Chris? So the stir fry there, so once we click on that, you come up with all your options there for beef, chicken, pork, etc., and they will come up accordingly. Have you got anything else to add on those there, Chris?
We've just got a couple of questions come through. So Elaine is asking, can you permanently delete items out of the deleted file? The answer to that, Elaine, is no, unless we clear out your system. And the reason for that is for that historical reporting. So if you had an item that you no longer sell and you deleted that permanently, you wouldn't be able to report on that. So they do sit in that deleted items folder, sort of side.
There is also very large complications that come into account there when you have customer accounts. If you delete an item that's been sold to a customer account, it will not work well for the system.
No.
Because that sales history, yeah, it needs to stay there.
Yep. Cool. And Nicole has a question about the modifier quantity. Have we got one of those set up there, Garth?
No, I don't.
Oh, there we go. So the way the item quantity will work is if I hit on the sugar, it's actually labeled as 1 sugar, but if I keep hitting on that, you'll see the quantity come up accordingly. So
I might also have that's not in the best condition. Where's my burger? No, I don't have that set up, sorry.
Yeah, so back in the day, Nicole, we did have to have 1 times sugar, 2 times sugar, 3 times sugar. So that just gets rid of the need for that. Therefore, you can have less buttons on the screen for your modifiers, which is cool. Okay. The other quick thing I did want to cover off that Garth did touch on briefly, is going back to me saying that your menu, your items should be set up the same as your menu. We can also change, as Garth said, we can change the order of those items. So what I like to do is, if we go into say main courses, I can change the order of these items to match my menu exactly. So on the menu as it's listed in the under the mains on the menu, if they're on the same order here, it just makes it easier to manage your menus if you change them a lot.
And your reporting. The item groups can also be changed as well.
Yeah, so that's quite handy. And the other thing that I wouldn't mind touching on is when we go into these modifiers here, if we had, we'll just use this as an example, but say this was a food item, this is for a food item for a panini, and you had the option for toasted or not toasted. Using this printer here, if you chose the not toasted item, you don't, option, you won't need that to print in the kitchen. So we could say here, no print. So if you click on panini, it'll pop up toasted or not toasted. If you click on the toasted one, it'll print to the kitchen. If you print on the not toasted, it won't print at all because you're going to hand that out of the cabinet. So that's quite handy as well. So yeah, another real handy one that a lot of people don't know about is the item quantity. So you can actually set in the system how many items you've got left. So if I will choose an item that, oops, sorry, go to main courses here. So we might say the lamb korma, we've only got enough ingredients to make 5 of those. So if I set that and I go back into the quick sale and find that korma curry, do you know where that is, Garth? You're more familiar with this than I am, this database. So it'll start prompting you to say that you've got 4 left, 3 left, and yeah, so that the the kitchen's run out, and that does work on the handhelds as well. Okay, so that's quite handy. So you don't have to go back to the customer and say, sorry, we haven't got any of those left. You'll know that when you put a place in the order.
There is also settings for the item quantity in the system that allow you to either be notified after each one or just after the last one has been ordered. There is also an option on whether you are able to order them once you've ordered the last one. And this is, so that's the last one there. So this is the warning. It says there aren't enough left. Do you want to order anyway? The reason this is in here is you can imagine a scenario when today there's not enough and we've gone through them. But tomorrow maybe there's a different restaurant manager on and they're unaware that there was a restriction yesterday and they haven't updated the system because the system will not auto update. So if we just process that sale, if we now go back to the item quantities, do you want to just click on that, Chris? So it needs to be maintained and you need to go back and open up the item quantity and you'll see that, so there's one here, the fish pie. So we just hit the delete. You don't want to put 0 because that would mean that there's 0 available. So just hit the delete button on that and the delete button on that, and now they're both back available in the system. So once your stock comes back in, so this isn't a stock management system. This is allow you to manage when you're running low on something, and typically it's going to be when the chef says, hey look, we've only got 6 steaks left or something like that. So it is not a stock management system. It's allowing you to keep a tabs on particular items that are running low in the system now.
Just to add there, in this current environment that we're in with COVID-19, this would be particularly handy with the phone orders. So you wouldn't have to bring the customer back if you had run out of an item. So it's worth thinking about. Yeah. So Searching for items as well. So if you can't find an item, it comes up with a message saying that you can't add the item because it needs to be unique. So if I try and add an item that we've got in the system, and we go OK, and it's now saying that you cannot save that item and you can't find that item, there is an option to search. So we can go search, and we can say we're going to search for Corona, and it'll bring up everything that's got Corona in it. So that's quite a handy thing as well, because it can be quite frustrating when you're trying to find an item by item group. Garth, I might get you to just run over inactive items as well, if that's cool. And,
yeah, sure. Okay, so we've got an option to set up what we call item inactive. So this is where items are not available. So it does get a little confusing, and I have to think about it every now and then to figure out what's going on. But let's have a look at this $5 subs and sliders as an example. So we've got edit the time period here. So what I've got set up is from 12 o'clock to 1:30 every day is the time period for this, and you can give it any name that you want to call it. It could be XYZ, it doesn't matter. This isn't really seen in the system. This is for your use and your prompt as to what it means. It might be, 4 p.m. Friday could be the time period name, and with the appropriate time, such as Sunday, and there's Tuesday ritual here. Okay, so from there you've got the time period, and then similar to our modifiers that we were looking at before, you've then got the items that are in this time period, and you can either be pulling across an item group from the top here, or as you can see down the bottom here, I have pulled across my subs and sliders, which goes along with my subs and sliders setup. Now within the POS settings setup, we can help you get this set up so that you either have the button completely hidden, so you don't even see it on the screen outside that time, or we can have it like I've got set up in my system. If you can just click on Quick Sale, Chris, then we can we'll see the subs and sliders. They exist in the on the screen, but what you'll see is that they have a strike through in the writing. So the beef sliders, these 4 here. And I'm clicking on them, but nothing's happening. So it just means that so your staff can still see them, as opposed to being confused because the button's not there. This can be really good when you've got time-specific items, so that it's something that is only available for lunch, or it's a Sunday roast or something like that. It just means that your staff can't accidentally or on purpose offer a lunchtime item or deal outside of that period. I think that covers off most of the item quantity there. Is there anything else you want me to add there, Chris?
No, I think that's all good. Now, we will open the floodgates. I'll give everybody the opportunity to be able to talk in a second. But what I'd just like to say that we've got another webinar at 11:30 today with Propo. So if you're interested in seeing that, we have sent an invite out, but just send us a message in Zoom, and we can send you the invite for that. But that,
for those who don't know, Propo is an online ordering system which integrates to our point of sale software. So it allows to link the 2 different softwares together, and you can pull through some or all of your menu items from your point of sale system through to the online ordering system, manage it there, and when an order comes through from the Propo or the online order, it opens a tab within our system and sends all your production dockets out to the kitchen and whoever else, coffees, baristas, etc., who needs them, with the information about the order and the pickup time.
At Propo also have a delivery module as well, which we will hopefully see in the webinar, and also they integrate to us to be able to use loyalty as well. So you can have an app, loyalty app basically, that's hooked into our loyalty backend in Onetap, which is quite cool.
Also has the option to for you to send notifications to those who have the app as well, which is very powerful.
Yeah. Okay, so what we'll do is, if anybody's got any questions, we will. I'll just unmute everybody so we can open it up. 2 seconds.
So just bear with us while we do this. As we said, this is the first webinar that we've done at this point, and we are still learning, but so have you just invited someone to ask us a question there, Chris?
Miha's just asked for an invitation, so we'll send you an invitation to that webinar this afternoon. Sorry, later this morning.
And I think David had his hand up a moment ago.
David?
David Fairley.
Oh, okay. I'm just struggling to be able to let everybody talk, but you should be able to talk now, David. Are you there, David? That's not working too well. Nikki, you've got your hand up. Are you there, Nikki?
Yes, I am. Not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now. Sorry
Good.
about that.
Hope you can't see me because I'm still on my activewear. Anyways, just a question about if we want to totally, Garth, you'll remember how painstaking our installation was 3 years ago. If we want to totally rework our system, because there's so many little nuggets you've just shared with us now, but our system is very messy. If we want to totally rework it, can we do that ourselves, or do we need to get you guys involved with that?
Well, I mean, most of the system that is designed that you can do all of what we've shown you there. I did make some reference to some of the settings that you might want to engage us to help with. But that's primarily because it can get really tricky if the end user starts playing around in the POS settings program too much, because if you call us and say it doesn't work and you're not sure what you changed, how you changed it, it can be quite a problem to troubleshoot and figure it out what's been changed and how. But all of the stuff within the point of sale, the Onetap software is able to be edited by the user, by yourself, and yeah, there's, if you've got the authority to change it, then you should be able to do so. It's probably more a question, let us know what it is you're trying to achieve, and maybe we can give you some direction on how to get that done.
Also, yeah. Nikki, we could we can arrange a sort of an online training session with you. It's a bit, bit more one-on-one, and to go through what you want to do, and then just guide you through it.
Yep, thanks for that, guys. That'll be great. We'll probably do that. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Maybe start off with a short email to support, outlining the changes that you're interested in. We can see if there's any resources that we can direct you to start with. Yeah.
Will do. Thank you.
No worries, Nikki. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Nikki. Can you hear me there, David? David, I think you've got a older version of Zoom, so it's not letting me do that. But if you've got a question, maybe just throw it through on the question answer chat. And Iris, thanks for your comments. It was good to know that it was useful. Yeah, we're looking, as I said before, we're looking to run a few more of these, and we'll get better at it. Yeah, so if anybody has got some suggestions on what they would like to cover in one of these webinars too, please send that through to sales@whizbang.co.nz.
We're also considering timing of these things. So the idea is once we get back to normality, is that we will continue to do these, and we want to be offering some options for timings that would be appropriate for those in evening service and for those who deal with early morning cafes and stuff. So probably having a couple of options there. So feel free to let us know what sort of times would work for you. We will not be able to make it perfect for everyone, but we'll see what we can do.
Cool. David's asked, can you go through the vent button? Not sure what that is, David.
David, the event, is right. Probably a whole nother webinar all in itself. Events is the full title is Events and Subsidized Items. So it's a way where we can create an event for a specific day and time with a time frame. It's really designed with the idea that someone comes along and says, I'm going to have a birthday party or engagement party or some sort of party. And it's to do with they want to put down a bar tab of a certain amount of money, but they want their guests to pay $3, $4, $5 a drink on the house pour, beers and wines or something like that. And essentially it's a way to create an account for the host and have a discount scheme, which is really a subsidized scheme where the host's tab pays for a portion of each drink that the customers order at the bar. It's not a 2-minute conversation. So yeah, we'll put that in webinar, but please feel free to email sales and I can send you some documentation on the basics of how it works. And once you've had a look through that, if you're interested in getting that up and running sooner than later, we can have a conversation outside of here.
Iris just sent a message to how exactly to get into the screen to add the amount of dishes. So just to recap on that, it's in the admin screen, items, and then you've got item quantity here, and you choose your item group that you want to go into, and that's how you get into that. And Hannah just wanted to know how to search for an item. So if we go into admin items, and if you go to items here and just choose any item group, you've got a search button down the bottom left-hand corner here. And that's where you can search. You can look at the different item groups you want to search in as well, but it's, most of the time we'll be using all.
Question from Andrew. If we accidentally change and saved items, is there, I'm guessing that, is there a way we can restore it? Unfortunately, no. If you've saved it, it has overridden the previous saved information. There is not a restore function, I'm afraid. There's another question coming through about stocks and stock takes and things. During this time when my role has completely changed, I've put together a number, it's not complete yet, but I've put together a number of short training videos on the setup of the stock system. If you go to YouTube and find our Whizbang Technologies page, you'll find a whole bunch of, there's 5 videos up there at the moment. I've still got a few more to do, but those might answer some questions. But feel free to email sales or support with a specific question if you've got more there. But yeah, do check out the YouTube page. There is a number of useful things and videos there that you can watch and pause and recap on and stuff as you need to. Recordings of these webinars, Chris, can we make those available? Oh, you're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that. I was talking to myself. So yes, we will make those webinars available. Any webinars, we'll send you some information about that out in an email after this. And I was just saying to myself then that we will send the invite to everybody in this in this webinar as well for our next webinar at 11:30. Okay.
Jess, you've asked a question there about tabs versus tables. So the tables are basically abbreviated to tab in the system. But you can create different sections within the system. Can you just show us the tab sections, Chris? And we can have different sales categories for all the different tab sections. So your bar tabs versus your table sections can have multiple different section names and sales categories, and different parts of those we can decide what prints on the production dockets, if that's what your question is about. But it also means that you can report on your sales for your eat-in dining section, for instance, versus your bar tab section. So yeah, there's numerous ways we can set that up. Feel free to contact support if you want some help with doing that. But it is very, very simple to edit an existing one or to create a new one, just in the same ways we do things here. So you can just click on a new and give it a sales category that exists, type in any name that you want and give a tab range. Now, just a point here, I'm not going to go through it completely, but you cannot make a change to a section that has an active table open in that section. So that means that if there's a table in the restaurant section and say table 5 is open, you can't edit or change this restaurant section until that table is no longer in use. If you have things there, you can transfer table 5 through to table 2000, make the changes and then transfer it back to table 5 and things. Hopefully that helps.
Cool. We'll just check if there's any other questions there. Jason, we will send out those the recordings for you.
Chris, do you see the message there from Jamie?
Yeah, I'll do that. Cool. I'll 2 seconds.
I'm just going to put up within the chat here. We're going to put up a link to the next webinar. So hold fire. Don't leave the chat just yet. If you're interested in going to the next webinar and haven't registered yet.
So I've just sent that through. Hopefully that you might have to cut and paste that from the chat there, but that's the invitation to the one this afternoon. Oh, sorry, later this morning. Sorry. Fantastic. So we will. Oh, another question comes through.
It was just a thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, so we'll end this this webinar now. But if you can think of anything that you want us to cover, as I said before, we want to keep doing these, and we could even look at running an in-person sort of training get together for our clients in Auckland and maybe Christchurch down the track. But at the moment, we're going to get used to these webinars. I hope everybody keeps safe, and yeah, looking forward to the announcement this afternoon. Hopefully we can start opening up. It'd be good.
Amazing.
Anyway, thank you all, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks,
you.
guys. Bye.
Bye.